What? You call that song fabulous?
No, I don't think so. I call it a touching, heart-wrenching ballad.
It just stops you in your tracks, really. And no one would think that you'd still be hearing it all those years later.
Now let me get this straight. I must remember that singing the heartfelt ballad entitled I'm Not in Love is always a blessing, a gift, and a miracle. But repeating Kathy's last dimwit, bashful, wimpy spoken line, Big Boys Don't Cry, to make that song go off in the middle is a crime that doesn't pay. So I prefer the ballad part, I'm Not in Love. How about you, Alice?
My favorite serious ballad part is I'm Not in Love, that Eric Stewart from 10cc was singing.
And Daisy, what about you?
I don't like the annoying repetitive wimpy bashful spoken word interlude, Big Boys Don't Cry, by short-lived evil whisperer Kathy Redfern. I hate it. 'Cause it made that original recording of that song a mess. I prefer the well-sung ballad part, done in a serious singer-songwriter style and in a serious manner, I'm Not in Love by 10cc.
George, what would you say about Miss Kathy Redfern and why you're not interested in her annoying interlude?
She's not my type. She can't sing, 'cause she didn't know how. She's too wimpy. She didn't have a singing voice like other girl singers of pop music, such as Skeeter Davis, Tina Marie, Kelly Marie, Frances Jolie, Terry Desario or Cindy Bullens. I don't like how annoying her bashful female voice repeats that same old spoken phrase, Big Boys Don't Cry, too many times in a row to make that song I'm Not in Love by 10cc go off, which I feel is not part of that song, because it made that original tune a mess like Mr. Messy, without making it neat like Little Miss Neat. That's why she was an idiot, disrupting band member Eric Stewart in midsection, insulting and scolding him to be quiet, which I know is not respectful, started lying about big boys, and repeating that same old line like a broken record to make that song go off topic. In other words, in mid-song, her contribution was the worst mistake. So the moral of that midsection is: you cannot tell anybody to be quiet in a disrespectful manner, while he or she is singing the meaningful ballad, I'm Not in Love. You cannot assume that all big boys don't cry, which is untrue. You cannot repeat Big Boys Don't Cry more than several times in a row to make that song go off topic. That means I'm not a big fan of her.
I'm not a huge fan of her either.
Like I said before, her middle part is my least favorite. The serious ballad part itself alone, I'm Not in Love seriously done by 10cc, is my most favorite.
Same thing as me. Jenna, talking about the song called I'm Not in Love, which is your most favorite part of the song, and which is your least favorite?
My least favorite is the annoying interlude, Big Boys Don't Cry, by Kathy Redfern. My most favorite is the serious ballad part, I'm Not in Love, by 10cc.
Speaking of that song called I'm Not in Love, I never find it humorous. I shouldn't laugh at that song because it's not funny. The only thing is about 10cc, they should have not taken that serious ballad for a joke. Instead, they would have taken it seriously. 10cc should have known from the start that the song I'm Not in Love could have been a serious pop ballad. They should have known better. I feel bad for Mr. Eric Stewart from that band because he made a mistake on creating no such duplicate loop of Kathy's dimwit last line, Big Boys Don't Cry, that spoiled up the midsection of that song that I am not impressed with. That was the worst production trick he ever did years ago. Instead of him being the king of denial, he would have been much more of a serious man, making a lot of serious music. That's what he could have been. He also could have been the king of serious, heartbreaking ballads done in a singer-songwriter style, especially the one that I have been talking about that he co-wrote with his friend Graham Gouldman, that follows in the footsteps of other heartbreaking ballads filled with sadness, such as Ain't No Sunshine by soul pop singer Bill Withers, and the flip side of You Got Me Where You Want Me, entitled Tomorrow Without Love by soft-voiced baritone pop singer Mr. Larry Santos. Lowell's idea to get Kathy to whisper no such thing in mid-song he had in mind sounded very impossible. More clarity is the key which they would have had in mind, but instead they had too much confusion in their brains, not knowing which topic for any song to choose, in which they couldn't make their minds up. I never called that song fabulous or brilliant, gorgeous or amazing. I call it very touching, emotional, tearful, that is so heartfelt to me. How about you, Daisy?
The heartbroken ballad I'm Not in Love, by British pop band 10cc, which they would have done with a serious twist, instead of a clever twist, is a song filled with hurt, sadness and lament, that those two songs, Tired of Towing the Line by Rocky Burnett, and the one by Air Supply, entitled, All Out of Love, follow in the footsteps of.
I never call that song a cliche. I call it a song of despair. Like I said before, I never call that amazing. It's a song filled with hurt and sadness that follows in the footsteps of a touching pop ballad written by Barry Murphy entitled We Can't Hide It Anymore, performed by pop singer Larry Santos.
I'm not in love.
First time I ever heard I'm Not in Love, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I thought I'd never heard anything like that before. And when I really started producing records in 1975, but it took me till late 1979 to have a hit. And through those years, whenever we got really excited about something that we'd done, I always used to say, come on, we've got to put on I'm Not in Love, and just remind ourselves, you know, cure our studio fever, because it was such a great sounding record.
So if I call you, don't make a fuss. Don't tell your friends about the two of us.
I remember when I'm Not in Love came out, and everyone was just in awe, because A, it was a great song, had a great melody, but the idea of the lyric was fabulous. This he complains too much aspect of it. And then the sound, the multi-layered vocals were a real treat to the ear. It's quite ironic that it comes out close in time to Bohemian Rhapsody, because those two are really the great multi-track hits of, dare I say, all time.
Richard Rudolph would have dedicated the serious version of that song, all about heartbreak, hurt, separation, and downcast, entitled I'm Not in Love, to his wife and soul singer Minnie Riperton, who had a hit single in 1975 entitled Loving You, who passed away due to the serious health issue of breast cancer on July the 12th, 1979, at the age of 31. Bruce Sedano would have dedicated that mournful ballad to the late Queen of Disco, Donna Summer, as his wife, who passed away from lung cancer at the age of 63 back in 2012. American Queen of Soul Aretha Franklin would have dedicated that heartbreaking ballad to her former husband, Ted White, who was an American businessman, songwriter, producer, and the manager for her music released on the Atlantic record label. Mr. Dan Crew, the brother of Bob Crew, would have dedicated that song to his former wife, Miss Cindy Bullens. Cheryl Ann Sarkeesian LaPierre Bono, under the stage name Cher as the goddess of pop, would have dedicated that song to her husband, Sonny Bono, she got a divorce from. Charles George, as the Prince of Wales, would have made a special dedication to his wife, Diana Spencer, as the Princess of Wales, who died from the car crash back in 1997 when playing that mournful song. Toni Tennille, who is my favorite pop singer in the world, from the pop duo Captain and Tennille, who had pop hits such as Do That to Me One More Time, Love Will Keep Us Together, The Way That I Want to Touch You, and Shop Around, would have dedicated that heartbreaking ballad, I'm Not in Love, without the false, phony interlude middle part, to Daryl Dragon from that same duo, who died from kidney failure in Prescott, Arizona. Miss Valerie Simpson would have dedicated that heartbreaking ballad to her husband, Nicholas Ashford, from Ashford and Simpson, who died from throat cancer. Background vocalist and soul gospel singer Cissy Houston would have dedicated that heartbreaking ballad to her husband named John Houston, she got a divorce from. Natalie Cole in 1985 would have dedicated that meaningful, mournful, heartfelt ballad, I'm Not in Love, to her husband, who was part of the soul group The Independents, named Marvin Yancey, who passed away from a heart attack. Too bad that 10cc did a messy job back in 1975 on their original recording. And when they did that, it sounded like it was missing the magic golden touch. They could have done it with more meaning. It's a pity that nobody erased Kathy Redfern's part in the middle. They could have shortened it up to make it more serious rather than being too clever. That's why I know 1975 was the craziest year for them. It's such a crying shame that nobody made it neat. They would have clarified the topic all about the end of love and romance. Their U.S. manager would have said to Kathy Redfern, Kathy, we can't go on like this. So please stop annoying me with that stupid, dumb, be quiet, big boys don't cry nonsense galore that goes to my head. That's why I have to tell you time and time again, once and for all, you are fired for ruining that midsection of that meaningful ballad, I'm Not in Love. So just go away, leave me alone, and don't you ever come back anymore.